Hey everyone, welcome to the show. Today we have Dan Kiernan on, former British #1 doubles player, former player at LSU, and current coach of Harri, Heliovaara, and Lloyd Glasspool, founder of SOTO Tennis Academy, and the host of my new favorite podcast, Control the Controllables. Dan, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Will. Hey, I'm blushing here. All of those that list. I've not heard it said like that before. So thank you for the
Well,
introduction.
you've earned it. So I wanted to start. I started listening to your podcast a few weeks ago, and I listened to the first or the most recent episode where you had Jamie Murray on about Opelka's comments, which we'll get into. But I've been also listening to a few other episodes, including I went back and pulled the Louis Caillet episode because I saw that name and had to, being into
Yeah.
double strategy, had to listen to that one. But I wanted to start with just the name of the podcast. It looks like you started it during COVID and went with Control the Controllables for the name. Why that name and what does that mean to you?
This could be the whole podcast here, Will, if you want to get into
Okay.
doubles. But no, I mean the quick version of the story. Yes, we started it during COVID. As I think a lot of people did. I also run an
Yeah.
academy out here in Spain, which is SOTO Tennis Academy, which I set up 13 years ago. And we were hustling, to be honest. We
Mhm.
were we were hit from all angles because people come to SOTO Tennis Academy from outside of the area, and
Sure.
people come to then travel and play tournaments. So kind of in one fell swoop, that was taken. Our whole business was taken. So yeah, we were hustling online programs. I actually did a couple of Instagram lives, which was the thing of the time. Maybe
Mhm.
not as funny as Rafa and Roger, but we jumped on, and I got some nice feedback. So I literally just set up I just looked in on Google how to set up a podcast, and
Yeah.
really as basic as that, and got speaking, kind of reaching out to. I guess it's the time I realized my network was bigger in the sport than I'd ever thought of before as well.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, back to Control the Controllables. We actually, I'm almost a bit embarrassed to admit it. I don't know if it's a good thing, but we called it Control the Coronables at first, um, which maybe felt a little bit sensitive after
Yeah.
the first few months, which is
Right.
when we then changed it to Control the Controllables, which is very much being the philosophy of the academy for 13 years. And I
Mhm.
guess my own personal story on that was, which is a big belief of mine. I was a player, an okay player, but I was like a lot of players who have a reason why they haven't made it, and blaming a federation or blaming
Mm.
not getting the wild cards or whatever it might be, the kind of
Mhm.
usual tennis player story. And then
Mhm.
when I stopped playing, I actually I started gambling for a few months.
Mhm.
Um badly, I became addicted to gambling. That was my thing, my fix. And I broke down one day and spoke to my now wife about it. And that was, I had this big realization that it's time you take control of yourself, Dan. What you're whinging and mourning and making excuses for every last thing, and it's never your fault.
Mm.
You grab a hold of your world, and the biggest controllable that we have is ourselves. And that was quite a defining moment for me.
Mhm.
That was 14 years ago.
Okay.
I haven't gambled since. I mean, you could argue I gambled setting up an academy in Spain. We're always taking some gambles, but yeah, I put that energy into something more productive and used kind of my hopefully my tennis expertise and experiences. But it all came from that place of me taking care of my own destiny and stopping waiting for other people to make it happen and stop making excuses, which is very much then what the academy was set up on. We're big on that. I'm big on that with my team. I'm big on that with all the players. Lloyd and Harri will know that I'm also big on that as well.
Hmm.
That, ultimately, we've got to take ultimate responsibility and ownership ourselves. So that's where that really has come from. Obviously, it has many connotations.
Sure.
You can delve into. There's a lot that can be talked about around control the controllables, but it's something that has a very strong meaning to myself. And with the podcast, we're trying to delve into the different stories within the world of tennis to showcase that as well. There's a lot of great people, not just players in tennis, but people in tennis that have taken so much from this sport, but by controlling what they can control and setting their lives up through the medium of tennis. And that's very much what the podcast stands for.
With your academy, I'm curious. So let's say like you have a junior player um, who's really talented, doing well, but maybe they do have that attitude where they're not controlling the controllables and they're making excuses for reasons why they lost a tournament or something. Is there a process or like an exercise you go through with them to help them kind of better understand what that philosophy is all about and what that means?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's there is a process, but it's different for different people.
Sure.
So I mean, one thing that I'll get back to the question, but what we're not looking at the academy is to take in perfect individuals that are already in that perfect headspace.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of that process is growing up, it's maturing, it's being put into the environment, and I'm a big believer that we're all the product of our environments. So on a larger scale, it's around setting the best possible environment day in, day out, and
Mm,
and we have a big saying that it starts with us, and that's within the team, and that's if I don't walk in the morning and say good morning to everybody with a smile on my face, I can't expect a snotty-nosed teenager to do it. If
mm,
I'm not willing to, put the work in every single day and live life the right way, we've got our strong values, which is an acronym of growth. And gratitude is very much at the top of that. Respect, ownership, want. We call it then the T is the daily bill. We've all got a bill to pay, to be
mhm,
successful in anything. And then the H is for humility. If we're not living that ourselves within the team, then we can't expect the players. So that's the starting point.
mhm,
We have to do that. Anyone that's wearing the badge, that's what it has to represent. Then from there, each player has their own personal roadmaps that are set out. And within that roadmap, yes, there's very much tennis related things, but there's also life skills on there as well. Where are
mhm,
they at? Whether it's school, whether it's changes that they want to make, whether it's that they want to have an extracurricular activity, something that's going to bring confidence. And
mhm,
then every player then has a lead coach and team around them that is holding them accountable to that.
mhm,
Some players will then go into having this what we call the daily bill, where they are every day accountable to that daily bill. They've all got their own WhatsApp groups. We've got apps, program management apps as well, where they're feeding back to their inner team
mm,
on those areas. So there's lots of different tools in place. We do know, and one thing I do know is there's naturally people that are stress management will be excuse makers.
mhm,
That's how they, and Andy Murray would be a great example of that. When Andy Murray gets very upset or is dealing with high levels of stress, his go-to is that it's because of the balls or it's the courts or it's because he didn't train for long
yeah,
enough or because the fitness coach didn't do. And so it's hard to fully change somebody's way, but I would
yeah,
also say if you take Andy Murray, he is absolutely controlling the biggest controllable himself in terms of what he's doing. So
right,
so so we're not talking about trying to make robots here. but we are talking about trying to help people develop as good people who have gratitude and appreciation for this sport, for this opportunity that they have. And I think when you get into that headspace, it's much easier for you to then have a better perspective and outlook and look to try and make the most of the opportunity. So there's certainly tools and strategies that are in place, but it will depend on the person, because different people will have different ways that they need to work.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, Andy Murray's a great example, because you do see him often, complaining to his box and you know complaining about whatever it might be. But yeah, he's definitely obviously controlling the things that are important to have the career that he has. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the most recent episode. You had Jamie Murray on, Noah Rubin, and y'all are talking about Opelka's comments. He said that if he could change one thing about the ATP Tour, he would just get rid of doubles. I wanted to get your take on it, because it seemed like in the episode you didn't share as much of your take. Being the host, you were kind of letting everyone else give their opinion. What do you make of the comments, and what are your thoughts on the state of doubles, I guess, on tour right now?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I would say, I don't mind the comments at all, would be the first thing I'd say. I think the more that we have people making bold statements, the more that people shine a light on our sport, and the better. So somebody like Riley, I don't personally know Riley, but great. I think he's great for the game. Give opinion. Nick Kyrgios, give opinion. Dan Evans,
Sure.
These players. So so the first thing I would say is I certainly have zero annoyance at the comment itself, because
Yeah.
everyone's entitled to opinions and I like them being shared. I think I've actually listened as well to Riley on a couple of podcasts since we spoke. I try and think balanced. I've also had a big chat with Harri, who's on the ATP Council.
Okay.
So it's been quite a hot topic the last couple of weeks, which I think is a good thing, because ultimately we're looking at the product, the tennis product, and then we're looking at the doubles product. How do we make this better? How do we make this more marketable? Now, my big opinion on it is you either go into a super league of 16 singles guys, and that's where tennis becomes, and that's where the ATP want to go, and they want to have the top 16 guys playing in boxes of 4, whatever it might be. Pick a city, take it on a road show, sell big tickets, make big money, and everyone gets to see the superstars they want to see. They can go that route. That then opens up the opportunity for other people to make tours, and whether it's UTR, whether it's whatever it might be. There's people out there. There's enough passionate people out there that I think if tennis gets pushed, and if doubles gets pushed, I think there's enough passionate people out there that have some money that will go, well, screw you guys. Actually, let's set this up. So again, I'm not against that. I change sometimes is good. Like I think I mentioned, like in Live Golf, you can look back at Live Golf, but one thing it has done is it's pushed the PGA to be a little bit more forthcoming with finances, to innovate, rather than just sitting on what they already have. So I think that's the first thing. I think the second thing, and the reason I say that, and I find it really difficult to differentiate between Mektic Pavic and Rusevori. I find that really, really difficult. And I know the argument is, well, Rusevori is needed to play against the singles guys. Well, he's not. He's not, because you could just have the top 16 guys playing in a Super League. Because you can just have the same counter argument that, well, doubles is needed to provide content for these events. We saw Indian Wells was absolutely ram-packed. Nearly every doubles match, certainly in a 2-3 day window. I think there's enough events that I've been to where the doubles is well represented. I just find it very hard to differentiate between your lower level singles players and the doubles players. You know, so that gets my back up a little bit, because then it's like, come on, guys, who are you? Who are you to say that? In some ways, you know, like you're not. If Alcaraz is saying it, you know, if Nadal's saying it, we've kind of got to bow down to them, because that is the reason why people, the majority of people, are not just buying tickets, but that's the reason, the TV rights, which is where the big amount of money comes. So I think there needs to be, but then it brings in there needs to then be a decision made, and ultimately what it boils down to in anything in life. If I don't want to look after boys at my tennis academy as the director of the tennis academy, and that's my vision, anyone that's trying to look after boys is going to have an uphill battle, because they're going against what my vision is as the owner, as the director, so the vision needs to be clearer. If coming from our tour is ultimately, and I don't know the ins and outs of that. I know that Noah Rubin on the podcast said that he's heard from numerous sources that the ATP don't want doubles, and it's just it's almost just a little part of it. Well, if that's the case, they need to say that. They need to say it. They need to be brave and say it. And let's look at setting up a separate doubles tour if that's the case. But I personally find it hard to believe that there's not value in it. You know, I think you go around the world. It's exciting for the most part. I know you can get some boring doubles matches, but it's a part of what we all love about. You know, you've said yourself, most of the people listening in on this podcast, they're playing club doubles. You know, they're doubles. There's an interest. There's an interest in there. So then it does boil down to marketability, and that's, you know, that then comes to the decision that needs to be made from the ATP. So I think that's where I think the decisions need to be made. Certainly on the tour, it doesn't seem like there's big stresses or issues. You know, I think, you know, it doesn't seem to be. I know you get it feels like every 5 to 10 years someone makes a bold statement, but it certainly doesn't seem to bother them so much. You know, you do get some singles players obviously playing in the events, but ultimately, like anything in life, unless there's a clear vision and there's a clear focus on what wants to be achieved, we'll we'll be in this place of status quo, of not quite knowing what to do. Whereas if somebody makes a bold move, then I think
something will change.
Something will change. And you know, I do then believe that, you know, the management of time, and again, they're things that are starting to be talked about, which is good. You know, why this didn't happen during the pandemic, I'll never know, because that was the perfect time to have these real discussions. But yeah, a doubles match maybe shouldn't be longer than an hour, you know, and I even the last couple of weeks in India, the amount of times I was sat at change of ends as the coach who's massively into the match, like completely emotionally invested in the match. And I thought, bloody hell, they're still sitting down. Like, geez, like they've played 9 points.
You know, I liked that idea. I guess it must have been on your podcast. I don't know if it was Jamie, but somebody mentioned, let's get rid of the the changeover on doubles. Like, you can do a changeover, but no break, you know? Maybe have a break after the set or something, but that'd be
the amount of times, Will, that I saw, because obviously as you're following the matches, you start to go, right, we're third after 11. Let's just keep my eye on the 11 match. And the amount of times I looked at the clock and it was 11:14 and the ball hadn't been hit.
Really? Yeah.
So if you start to go, right, because actually the warm-up, let's be honest, the warm-up's a bunch of nothing as well, because they walk on the court, welcome the players. Some of them go and change their shoes, change grips, do a bit of this. Then they hit for 3-4 minutes. Then they go back to their towel. It's like 12, 13, 14 minutes.
Yeah.
whereas if for scheduling reasons, because let's be honest, this is the money is TV money. So for
Right.
scheduling reasons, if they know that the program is going to start at 6 o'clock, second that starts at 6 o'clock, and the person with the ticket goes at 6 o'clock, that's when the first serve is hit. There's
Mm-hmm.
no sitting down at change of ends.
Yeah.
You can make noise in the crowd, and that I noticed that in Indian Wells actually. The American crowds are always louder.
Yeah.
I went to university in America, so I can say this because I love America. But America is louder in general,
Yeah.
as a country. But it was great. There was a buzz feeling in that, But having people a bit more of a carnival atmosphere where people are speaking and there's
Mm-hmm.
more happening. I think the doubles guys would welcome that, and you cut out those bits at the start of the match. You cut out those bits at the change of ends. All of a
Mm-hmm.
sudden, you've got 45 minutes to an hour of high intensity. The scoring system is fun. It's a pain in the arse as a coach when you're on the losing end, but it's a fun scoring system.
Yeah.
Most of the matches do come down to 1, 2, 3 points here or there, and then you market the hell out of the players.
Mm-hmm.
You've got a product. You've
Yeah.
got a product. So I don't think they're far away. And I hope that through this discussion, and that can be started by people disagreeing with doubles, that's fine. I love
Mm-hmm.
doubles. I'm very passionate about it. I hope that discussion started will lead to maybe some
To some
innovation
changes. Yeah.
that then brings the sport onto a different platform that we can all celebrate for the next 15, 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
Because I saw that college tennis has just taken. I mean that
Well,
broke my heart.
I
Is
think
that
that's I think that was an April Fool's joke. I saw
ah
that
was
too.
it?
Yeah, I
Was
think
it?
so. I think
Okay.
so. I saw it too and like retweeted it and was like, no, like they can't do this. But then I read through the comments and people were saying it's Fool's. So
Okay.
thank
Right.
goodness that's not true.
That's the only April Fools I got done by this year. But that
Yeah,
would be
so did
heart
I.
that would be heartbreaking
Yeah,
because
that'd be tough.
if I go into the ecosystem of an academy or the ecosystem of tennis, but academies and clubs are a big part of that. You're giving hope as a
Yeah.
coach, and not everyone has the skill set. Not everyone has the skill set to play. We saw that Alcaraz Sinner point the other day. Not
Yeah.
everyone has got that skill set,
Nope.
But I saw Sinner play doubles, and he's stood in the complete wrong place. He's
Yeah.
scared. He's scared of the ball, so he doesn't have the skill set to play doubles. So
Right.
so some people that are more natural with their hand skills, with their reading of the ball, with their
Hmm.
anticipation, are we saying that those skills aren't as important as speed into a
Yeah.
corner? And that's something that when we are teaching youngsters and getting people into the game, there is some people that are more naturally gifted in the attributes that are needed to be a good doubles player. So
Yeah, of
so
course.
so, so for me, who's trying to also motivate people to have a journey like that, and
Hmm.
many thousands of others, to be able to use that college and look how important doubles is for college, and you get yourself into the lineup in college by playing doubles, and then who knows, that's a legitimate route into the sport of tennis, which
Yeah.
I'm all for supporting people into tennis. I'm
Hmm.
all for giving people hope and giving people an opportunity. And that would be something I'd love to share with your listeners, or if they listen to Jamie Murray, Noah Rubin on Control the Controllables. It was talked about the sport of cricket, and 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 it's probably a bad sport to use to Americans, but if we take cricket, which can be a 5-day event,
Hmm.
which is a test match, and then they used to have 1-day events. They now have, which the 1-day event would have been, let's say, 300 balls or pitches received for each team.
Okay.
Now they have an event called the 100, which is just 100 balls or pitches that are received. So as you can imagine, the skill set for 100 balls, which lasts 45 minutes, compared to playing for 5 days, are completely different.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, the one that's playing 100 balls is the stronger player, the one that can hit bigger. So it's not called a home run, but in baseball terms, hitting the home runs,
Yeah.
whereas the one over 5 days is more patience, strategy. Now, who
Endurance. Yeah.
who's to say that either skill set is better? And,
Yeah.
and 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 because it's been marketed so well in back in the UK and India and Australia, the key countries that play cricket, they are now selling out all forms of cricket. Tickets are
Huh.
tickets and TV rights are sold, are doing incredibly well.
Yeah.
And nobody is looking down their nose at the one that's playing the 100 balls and saying, "No, well, you're just playing 100 balls." I'm playing 5 days, which
Interesting.
which is kind of the singles snobbery is a little bit to the doubles
Yeah.
guys.
I
You're just in half a court. You're just which
yeah.
is look, which is not the case. They're working as hard. They're on the court as much. They're
Right.
they're putting they're putting, but to a different skill set.
Sure.
They're honing in a different level of peak performance for a different skill set than they are on the singles court, and that's where I find it slightly frustrating as well, because I think it's uninformed, uneducated views, I think, that people are making
Hmm.
there, and they're just falling into this trap of following the narrative that you only play doubles if you're not very good at singles.
Yeah.
Whereas whereas you could have the narrative where you only play in singles because you're not very good at doubles.
Yeah.
There's no reason why that couldn't be looked at like that as well.
Yeah. I like the idea you mentioned earlier about getting the crowd like more involved in the doubles matches. And I think like to accomplish a lot of this, it probably would have to like break off into its own tour, and then it could just really innovate fast and like mess with the format. But one of the biggest complaints I have as a big tennis fan, and then I imagine like if somebody's coming to a tournament for the first time, is having to sit there and wait for the next changeover to get into my seat, right? So
Yeah.
if doubles had its own tour and had the crowd talking and had like music pumping between points, kind of like World Team Tennis did, um, I think new fans wouldn't be like, "Oh, I'm not going to that boring singles match. You have to wait for the changeover. You have to
Yeah,
be
yeah.
quiet during the point." Like doubles could, I don't know, maybe leverage that at some point. But I don't. I mean, I'm not trying to create like a competition. I love singles and
Yeah,
doubles,
they,
but
they could almost have a
it's
doubles court though. So if I,
yeah.
if we use the example of cricket, it's quite funny. They have with these short matches that are happening on an evening after work. So
Hmm.
people go to work. There's a lot of beer tends to be drunk.
Yeah.
But they have hot tub area. So they've got like a
Mm,
VIP area. So some people are sat in hot tubs. You've got different bar areas. There's things going on that make it more of a carnival atmosphere. And
mhm.
it's, I don't know, maybe it is that. Maybe it can be the same tour, but you have a doubles court that's set up with different VIP seating, and you've got
Yeah.
an area where there's a band playing before they come on, or the something that that brings a little bit more razzmatazz to it, because like you say, there is nothing more off-putting than, especially if you're trying to get in first game of the second set and you've got to wait blinking 3 games to get
Yeah.
into your seat.
Right.
That's going to put a lot of people off.
Yeah.
But yeah, the conversations like this, but conversations at a higher level, which I know are happening, but
Yeah.
my concern is that the people in charge at the ATP tour have already kind of made their mind up that they've got a bit of a stick up their backsides, that
Yeah.
they're not the most innovative people in the world.
Right.
They're protecting their roles, and it's hard to see them pushing the boat, doing anything too extravagant,
Right.
other than if there was a big pressure coming from the big players within the sport to get rid of doubles, that might be the
Mhm.
route that they will look to go. But it's hard to imagine that they're sitting there thinking, how do we make doubles more
Yeah.
accessible and more marketable? Because that doesn't seem to be in their master plan, which is the
Yeah.
concern.
Yeah. I want to move on to a new topic, but we could go on and on about this.
Yeah.
I would love to see them just do some basic marketing for doubles, though. I mean, just even they had the WTA finals here in Fort Worth, and like all of the signs around the stadium and stuff, it's just the singles players. Like, if you were new to tennis or new to the tournament, you wouldn't even know a doubles tournament was going on there. So it's like just like basic stuff like that, I feel like could be done. But anyways, let's move on to your work with Lloyd and Harri. So they made the ATP finals last year. I think at the beginning of the year they were both outside the top 50. Is that right?
I think they were like 70 and 68, something like that. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so they had a kind of a breakthrough year there. Um, what is something they're better at now than they were, say, like a year or a year and a half ago? What's been like the difference for them?
Um, I think one of the biggest differences is they've dedicated themselves to doubles.
Mhm.
So they've been playing together for 18, 20 months. It obviously takes a little bit of time to establish one that partnership. Two, doubles is so quick, and it does come down to 1-2 volleys, making a first serve, getting
Mhm.
onto a return. It comes down to such fine margins that these top guys are so tuned into that. They're training crazy to get to that point where they're able to make that lunge volley, or they're able to, make that reaction volley that's going to make the difference. So I
Mhm.
think as they've matured into that, I think that absolutely is one of the biggest things
Mhm.
that's happened. And then the second thing on that, the journey on the way up is not easy, right? I mean, you've got Henry Patton and Julian Cash that have made it look easy by winning 10 challenges in a row last year, but
Yeah.
you have to win a lot. You have to really win a lot to make your way through.
Mhm.
And so that's the second bit. It sometimes takes a bit of time for your ranking to settle in terms
Mhm.
of what your level is. I think we're seeing that a bit with Le Mans and Withrow now. I think
Yeah.
their rankings probably still a bit skew with, but it's going to probably settle near enough around the top 15, top 20, you would think, the way that they're going, but they're not quite there yet. So you need that time on the tour to accumulate enough points. So I think
Sure.
that's it. That's important. In terms of their own games, we always have to look at serve and return as a starting point, because
Mhm.
it's so prominent to what they're doing, and that's
Mhm.
been a big area for Harri, where he's really really improved that in the last few months. And then with Lloyd, who's always been a very natural server,
Mhm.
he's been the one that's had to work a bit more on the returns. And certainly certain returns that players maybe were targeting 6-8 months ago. I smile when they target those returns now, because I
Yeah.
know I know how locked in it is, and I think that's also a great example for any young players that are, these guys are 29, 33 years old. I can absolutely tell you with certainty they are developing their game.
Yeah.
They're adding to their game, and making some quite huge differences in their game as well. It's still an ongoing process. So we've now, again, what we'll do at the end of these events, we then analyze. We're very lucky to have, very good data that comes through, and video analysis, and we
Mhm.
can really earmark areas, one, that we feel and we see with the naked eye, but two, we can then delve into the data to really see where the next gains come from. So yeah, watch this space over the next few months, but those areas have already been identified, and will continue to be worked at as well. But yeah, certainly
Sure.
it's been a big rise for them, and that's been my job as well as their coach to keep getting that through, because we see it time and time again in tennis is people rise quickly, but then they feel they've got something to protect, and the way that the ranking system works with this 12-month rolling system. But the message is very clear to them. They're still rising. It's still, they're still, okay, they're 11 in the world, but they're rising, and they're trying to get to the very top. And I think that's an important mentality as well, rather than starting to feel like we now need to protect our points and protect our ranking, and
kind of
protect our
plateau a little bit.
Which we see happen kind of globally in this sport as well. But yeah, it's an ongoing process. It really is. They're still, I would say, in the stage of their partnership where there's still big developments can happen, and they want to happen, and they're working towards that. Whereas you get some of these doubles guys that are in their late 30s that are using their early 40s or almost mid 40s, like Rohan Bopana, that are using their nous, their skill sets that they've honed in, their experience that they've used for many years. Where I would look at Lloyd, and I think I saw some rankings today that there's only 2 or 3 guys in the top 100 under 25 years old in the men's doubles rankings right now. So that puts Lloyd at 29 as a youngster, and I've had to remind the boys have lost a couple of tight, heartbreaking matches in Indian Wells and Miami in the quarterfinals, but I've had to also remind them it's the first time they've played those events. It's
it's
still
crazy to see, crazy to hear.
They haven't played Monte Carlo before. They got into Rome last year, which is a funny story. I don't know if you picked up on that story, but they found out literally at midnight that they were getting in the next day. So Harri managed to get on a plane that morning out to Rome and just made it in time to play against Salisbury Ram, and they went and won that match. So you've got to be ready to take the opportunities, but they're still very much newcomers to this, So developing their games, but also just becoming normalizing these events, feeling comfortable, feeling that they belong, feeling how they feel in a quarterfinal match, a semi-final match. These are all relatively new experiences for the boys, which in itself is gonna help them improve as well.
Plenty of upside to take advantage of. So you mentioned Lloyd's returns, and I've heard different philosophies on return strategy, especially at the higher levels, and want to get your take. So like, at the club level, I typically teach people, make as many returns as possible, just avoid missing the return. But then at the pro level, I feel like you can also take a different approach of like rip the returns, and eventually you're going to have a game where you land a couple of them and you're going to get that break, and that might be all you need for the set. How do you think about that balance of consistency versus going for it? Because obviously a lot of the time at the pro level, just making the returns not good enough because somebody's there at the net to pick that off. So how do you think about return strategy?
Can we have consistency whilst going for it?
That's the dream.
Yeah, look, I think you tend to, I'll maybe not say names because I don't want to offend anybody, but you tend to have, you will have players that aren't that established as returners. They're not overly competent as returners. So they then have that strategy, I believe, of do I lob a lot? Do I, try and just, if I touch the ball, I make it in some way? Or do I try and bluff people out of serving into this spot by hitting it really hard and making the opponent feel like, geez, I don't want to serve there because they hit the ball so hard. So you'll tend to get the less competent returners will pick those strategies.
Okay.
Whereas I would say, and I honestly believe this with Lloyd and with Harri, I think they're both very competent returners, and I think it's why I believe they're going to go on and win Grand Slams, because they can do it all.
Yeah.
They can both find the court with quality on a consistent basis, and ultimately it then will become a little bit down to strategy of whether it's scouting, and you've got a pretty good idea through scouting of what plays people are going to do, and having a clarity of target that you're going for. And then secondly, if there's a difference between getting your racket on it and it being in the hitting zone, which is why a lot of players nowadays on first serve in particular aren't serving body serves so much,
Yeah.
because if you're serving body against a good returner, it means they're going to get their racket on it and they're going to have a hit, and the best returners are able to come up with something. So you tend to get people serving more into the spots and trying to get people on the stretch more.
Yeah.
And that's where, again, if you take some of the best servers, Le Mans and Withrow, Le Mans in particular, he's a big one for serving even second serve into spots,
Yeah.
because he's got the speed to be able to do it. So it will then, and you'll hear me say these words quite a bit. I say them as coaching. It depends, because it does depend then who you're playing, because
Yeah.
you can have a Le Mans and Withrow that are serving average of 126, 127 miles an hour first serve, to Roger Vasselin, who's maybe serving 112. And that's a big difference at that level.
Sure.
So you will have, I guess, different strategies potentially, but I would just go back to probably the competence of the returner.
Yeah.
And that's the best returners are looking to be aggressive on the return, and ultimately they're going to have to deal with some on the stretch, and the lobs are very important shot in doubles. The lob
Yeah.
returns, Jamie Murray, I think, was a big one to bring that in a few years ago with
Yeah.
Louis Caillé, the way that to manage his forehand. Obviously, Leander Paes, these type of players that use the lob return incredibly well. It's now a very much used. It's quite a high percentage return that the players are using on the stretch now. But yeah, your go-to as a competent returner is to hit with a quality return, but not overhit. You're not trying to, I guess, getting into the technical side of returns. You also don't want to be slapping a return, and
Right.
if you're slapping a return, it means that your energy is going into the ball rather than your energy going out of the ball, and you actually want to get your spark happening from the contact and out, rather than sparking too much in, which is where we lose the control as well.
Right.
So when you see, so people that it's a kind of a, and I would say the same with club players. When you see someone just absolutely slapping one, it's often you found their weakness.
Yeah. It's
You
a
found that.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, just you found the shot that they're almost trying to put you off going to, because it makes them feel uncomfortable. So they're just going to try and just absolutely rip it, and hope that you then don't serve there again.
Yeah, interesting. I haven't heard it phrased that way, like energy going into the ball versus coming out of the ball, because I guess that makes sense. Because if you're like slapping at it and taking a big backswing, like that's not really what you want from a good returner, right? So,
No, well, the acceleration. If the acceleration, we call it spark, but if that's
okay.
if that's happened before contact,
Yeah.
you've tend to have already opened up the body and the hips, and all that's left now is for the arm to slap into the ball,
Right.
and we get a lot more control when we use the body together. So
hmm
we want body spark, we want body energy, and that will
Yeah.
happen more from contact and out than it will when you're, but when
Okay.
you don't have confidence and you're trying to just hit it, you will
hmm
tend to open up early and spark way too early, which then turns into that
Yeah.
feeling of just slapping into the ball.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I want to move on to a kind of a club level doubles question for you. Uh, Obviously, one of the biggest mistakes I see at the club level is just covering the alley too much. It's something that I'm sure you've been asked about a thousand times, but how do you explain to players um, at that level to stop covering the alley, or how do you convince them? Because I feel like a lot of times I've been coaching a high school team recently, and I tell the players, and then they'll go out there, and then they'll still like stand close to the doubles alley. How do you go about kind of getting that message through, whether it's through a drill or phrasing of how you explain something? How do you explain that to players?
Yeah, it's an interesting one because
Yeah.
you can use statistics,
Hmm.
but the problem with using statistics of professional tennis is the statistics will be different at club level tennis.
Hmm.
So we know it's a create something like 87% of balls go through the middle window on the doubles on at the pro level. Now
Hmm.
that's because guys are serving it because it's different in men and women's as well, very much so.
Sure.
The strategy is very different in men and women's doubles because the serve isn't as prominent and dominant in the women's game.
Yeah.
So so what you could say, and Louis Kaya, who is a mentor of mine, he he says it all the time. He's never known one of his teams be beaten in the alleys 2 times in a match ever in the whole time he's coached.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, but Louis, that's when they're serving at 125 mile an hour.
Yeah.
So we have to bear that in mind. So I
Hmm.
would I so I would still try and use statistics. I like using statistics at all levels, and that might just be watching a set and just having. I might have a pen and paper. I might just keep it in my head. How many balls go into the alleys
Hmm.
off return? And you might take that data set and say, hey guys, in the last set, there's been one shot that's gone in the alleys off the return. And
Hmm.
you might be able to collate that over a period of 4 or 5 weeks. So there's nothing better than showing that, showing
Hmm.
that with facts to get the buy-in. So that would be one kind of relatively simple way. The way that I absolutely love, and again, it's that man Louis Kaye again, and I'm sure Will, with your doubles expertise and your admiration of doubles, you've seen it before, but he uses ropes
Hmm.
to show the territory,
Yeah.
and to be able to mark that out. Now, do you have 80 feet of rope hanging around at your tennis club? I don't know, but you can, but there's other ways of doing it. We do it on the clay courts by drawing lines.
Sure.
And that's a really nice way to get people at all levels of the sport just to understand the geometry of the court
Hmm.
and the positions that you need to be in. Because if the serve goes out wide on the juice side, well, in particular, and it's quite a wide serve, you
Yeah.
probably do have to watch the alleys a little bit more,
Hmm.
and by moving over there, even by having your left foot on the singles line, because of the geometry and the new position of the court, you're still covering the middle from that angle.
Hmm. Yeah.
Whereas if the serve goes down the tee, you actually can be much more closer to the middle to be able to still, with one step and sticking the racket out, cover a ball that, let's say, goes into the first foot of the alley.
Yeah.
And so then maybe it's saying to them, well, if the other team hit it in the half of the alley, let them have the point.
Yeah.
Because the whole so that's one way of showing it. But then the third bit, and this is, I think, often the icing on the cake or the cherry on the top of getting people to buy into it, is the overarching strategy of doubles is to cause stress to your opponents.
Mm.
So in tennis is a muscle relaxing sport. All of us at all levels of the game play the sport better when our muscles are relaxed. So as
Yeah.
soon as there's tension, it's very difficult for us to execute. So it's a little bit of a cat and mouse game, doubles, because you're almost wanting to edge them on
Mm-hmm.
to hit that small area.
Yeah.
And you say to a club player, how many times off a 70-mile-an-hour serve are you able to redirect the ball into that 1.5, 2 feet of space? If
Yeah.
you can, have the point. Well done.
Yeah.
Because I'll take the other 10 points that you miss wide because you're
Yeah.
trying to do it.
Yeah.
So it's trying to, and at all levels of doubles that I've ever coached, it's trying to get them to understand that what you do without even hitting a tennis ball can have such a monumental effect on how your opponents are feeling.
Mm-hmm.
If your opponent has a really not good backhand cross court, take it away from them, make them hit
Mm-hmm.
backhand down the line. Just
Yeah.
by making them do that, you've caused stress and you've caused tension. So
Yeah.
now their ability to execute is much harder. If it's they love their forehand return, don't serve to their forehand.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever it might, it's in different ways, and that's where, at the very basic level of strategy, it's about trying to use the net player to be in the way of the ball.
Mm-hmm.
Use the net player to get in the way of the ball and force your opponent to hit the return that they don't want to hit, which is gonna build some stress. So it would be trying to explain those things, trying to then show them visually through the ropes, trying to show them maybe visually with some objective data. That
Mm-hmm.
doesn't have to be scary. That can just be, secretly charting one of their sets. And then ultimately there has to then be, with any student, however young or old they are, there has to be an intention to want to get better. if
Yeah.
you've got a student who doesn't have that intention to want to get better, it doesn't matter really what you show them, because
Right.
they're gonna reject it anyway.
Yeah.
But that would be my 3-step strategy to try and get club, school players to
Awesome.
buy into it.
Yeah, I'll try to find a video of the rope example and link to it in the show notes for people listening. So I wanted to ask also about um drills. What are some of your favorite doubles drills to get people more comfortable, especially at the net,
Yep.
um, for club players?
So I like to position. Bravery is a big character trait you need to be good at doubles.
Hmm.
If you're brave, then you will put yourself in positions which naturally cause stress to your opponent.
Hmm.
If you're not
Yeah.
brave, you're going to hang back so far that then you're relatively easy to play.
Hmm.
So something even as basic as, I like to get players, one, standing on, almost on the net, right up by the net, putting their elbows then over the net,
Mm.
and firing balls at them where they're just literally turning their hand at the ball.
Interesting. So they're hitting
Then
it on the other side of the net.
So they're hitting it on the other side of the net. Then
Uh,
I would take them back to being completely on their side, and
yeah.
just getting them. It's changing the muscle pattern of, actually, rather than most people, when a ball comes at us, it's a human reaction to pull away.
Yeah.
Just like if somebody goes to punch you in the face, there's a human reaction to move away. So when the ball comes fast at us, the natural reaction is we go back, the racket goes back, we lose complete control. Whereas
Hmm.
what we want is, we want the racket and the hand to go to the ball when we're that
Hmm.
close to the net. Yeah, so it's trying to get that change.
That's a
So
good one. I'm doing
with
that one today with the
yeah,
kids.
yeah, so elbows over means they have no
Yeah.
choice because they can't go back. Then
Yeah.
you go a little bit further back, but still on top
Yeah.
of the net. And then you're trying to build a quick tempo. Can you feed the ball really fast at them?
I like
And
that. Yeah.
they're just able to just put their hand and racket out to the ball. So
Hmm.
that would certainly be something that I I think to play doubles at a high level at any stage, age and stage, if you're comfortable really close to the net,
Mm-hmm.
you're in a good place.
It's going to help a
So
lot. Yeah.
yeah, in that. So I mean, and we do a lot. I do a lot of that with the boys. We then bring in exactly where to volley. So there's no thought process. It's just that's drilled in. If you
Yeah.
receive that, you volley there. And
Yeah.
in general, when you're that close to the net, it's just about angling the volleys off.
Right.
You just that's all you want to do. So that then becomes second nature. So yeah,
Yeah.
so when we're talking about that phase of volleying, those would be a couple of ideas.
Yeah. The volley location is something I've studied a lot more the last like year or so. And when I was in Montreal last year and I was watching Wesley Koolhof practice, and he was doing a similar drill where he was way up at the net and his coach is feeding right at him. And they had some sticks kind of across the singles line, and he was just taking every volley across his body
Yeah.
from real close to the net. What is your kind of philosophy on where to hit your volleys? Because I've been teaching people to do that. Just don't even think about it. Just hit it across your body if you're close to the net, because you'll miss a lot fewer, and then if you angle it off, like they're probably not going to get to it anyways. But what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, well, that's it. That's exactly right. I mean, if your racket's touching the ball that close to the net,
Hmm.
you you you're pretty much winning the point. If
Yeah.
unless you hit it to them, and then someone hits a reaction volley. So yeah, so across the body angle off would be absolute go-tos. Now, the other philosophy that we've got is to think more about your target being the net rather than thinking about your target in the court. So
Mm.
because it's all about getting the right trajectory of the volley,
Hmm.
and when people are thinking their focus is more on where they're volleying, you can lose. All of a sudden, you see people hitting volleys 3, 4, 5 feet over the net, which is not what we want to do. So just bringing the focus very close to you because you're so close, and actually aiming for the net tape.
Hmm.
That's your
Okay.
target, the
Yeah.
white of the net tape, just across your body, angling off, and it's almost impossible to hit the net.
Yeah.
It's almost impossible. So if you're doing that, that doesn't come back. If you're doing that and the ball's going 3, 4 feet over the net, the ball's going out or it's coming back.
Hmm.
But if it's just darting really low over the net at that correct trajectory. So we think about trajectory rather than target. That
Okay.
would be
Interesting.
a good way of thinking of it. But yeah, there's going to be the odd situation. We've got to take in the variables of where the player is. Serve goes down the tee. Serve goes down the tee on the juice side. The ball comes. You might choose to play a backhand the other way because rather than across your body because the player's in the center of the court.
Hmm.
So there's going to be, if you've got time, you might choose to do that, which the best doubles guys are able to play that kind of. It's quite a difficult volley,
Hmm.
but as a general rule, just across your body, angling away with low trajectory, and when you're that close to the net, you won't go far wrong.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. So last question and then a couple of rapid fire questions. So this is a conversation about returns that I've had with a few people, and it seems like there's different philosophies on it, and I want to get your take. So you'll see at the club level, some certainly at the pro level, um, when the other team lines up in I formation, the returner's partner will signal, line or cross, like where are you hitting this return? And I've heard from some players say, yeah, we like to call it, and then you stick to, your whatever we called. I spoke with Catherine Harrison from the women's tour earlier this year, and she said she likes to just feel it out and like wait until the return or the serve gets to her, and then kind of decide, okay, I have a backhand, I'm going to go line across my body, or I have a forehand, I'd prefer to go cross, or I have more time, I might go line. What's your philosophy on calling returns down the line versus cross court?
Uh, the thing is, I don't think you can, because it depends where the serve goes.
Okay.
So, in general, where the best returners are able to, when they're jammed in on their backhand, they can go down the line.
Hmm.
Whereas in general, people play the natural angle across their body on the return
Hmm.
better. They tend to hit that return better. So if someone's hit a big wide serve on the ad
Hmm.
on your backhand, it's not advisable to be trying to change that down the line.
Yeah.
As an example, unless you get a good hit on it. So I would say my philosophy on that is we will study the patterns in advance.
Mm.
But again, it depends. I coach two players. One of them loves stats. The other one just
Yeah.
almost doesn't want them.
Yeah.
So it's both of them will always have to come down to feel.
Sure.
But you are doing your due diligence to give some the information that is accessible,
Hmm.
and out there. Like we spotted, again, without going into the big detail, but Le Mans and Withrow, when we went off for rain the first time, we spotted something in
Yeah.
terms of what they were doing, which meant we wanted to use a down the line return. So that
Hmm.
was a real crucial bit of information that was then used on the break point to get the break.
Hmm.
That was, and that was a slightly different pattern to what we'd picked up in their previous matches.
Okay.
So but these guys are so good, and if they're in a good headspace mentally, they're starting to feel that. Where you've got to be very, very careful as well as coaches is never deliver it as definite. So if I
Yeah.
when I'm delivering scouting reports, it's guys, in this match, this is what happened.
Yeah.
However, you guys be ready to feel
Adjust.
and
Yeah.
and do what you need to do on the given day.
Hmm.
Um, I think it's much easier to have set plays in your head of what you're going to do as server. You might go on break point. This is the player we're gonna do, and a lot of players like to have that before the match. That on
Yeah.
my first break point, we're gonna do I serve T move right.
Yeah.
What? Whereas the return, because there's so many variables of where the serve is going,
Yeah. It's less in your control. Yeah.
it's a lot more challenging. There will
Okay.
obviously be there's certain plays, and this is why, as returner's partner, it's important that, and we'll have our guys, and most of the players do it, they're almost on the side a little bit,
Hmm.
because you want in their peripheral vision to be seeing where the serve's going, because you start to feel what the likely return is going to be and the likely player is going to be.
Yeah. So they're like turned towards the service box a little bit.
Yes.
Yeah.
And one of the big reasons for that is for them to be able to feel what's happening. Whereas if
Yeah.
you're completely turned looking forward, the ball doesn't come into your vision until it's almost too late. You don't know where the serve's gone, and then
Yeah.
you don't know where the return's going.
Right.
But so there'll be certain plays. If somebody's serving, IT on the ad to the forehand, a lot of
Hmm.
people will go down the line return
Hmm.
if they can get their racket on. If
Yeah.
they're on the stretch, then they'll struggle to pull it back cross court, pull it back down the line. So you start to use your intuition on what's happening within the match, and I think it's so important that players have that. And I'm not just talking about Lloyd and Harri here. I'm talking about me as a player. I'm talking about all the players I've worked with and
Hmm.
been around in the sport for the last 30 years. Ultimately, tennis is about moments, and moments tend to be about feel.
Yeah.
Now, giving yourself information and doing your due diligence will obviously help your intelligence of a situation.
Mm-hmm.
But all of these guys can serve in all directions. All of these guys can come up with a certain play. So
Mm-hmm.
there's nobody I would trust more than the player on the court to feel that situation.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a long-winded response to, yes, absolutely get the information in advance,
Mm-hmm.
have that in your computer, but then that on top of what actually is happening and what you're feeling
Mm-hmm.
will result in what you're going to look to do. And I would say on a second serve, you're more likely to make that call
Yeah, you can
because
adjust a little easier.
you're
Sure.
going to get a hit in all directions. But if someone's hitting a 1-3-1,
Yeah. Just do your best to get it back.
yeah, I
All
think
right.
so.
So a couple of rapid fire questions, then I'm gonna let you go. What is your favorite tennis book?
My favorite tennis book. Oh, good question. Um, the one that jumped to my mind because this helped me when I was younger is Winning Ugly by Brad Gilbert,
Mm-hmm.
because that was what I liked about that when I was younger, is it helped me see tennis as not just hitting tennis balls,
Yeah.
and I think that's something that youngsters. I've got a son who plays tennis. He's 12. He can't see that there's more to it than hitting tennis balls and winning and losing,
Mm-hmm.
and reading that. So that was definitely an impact. Mentally tough tennis. But Anthony Ross is an incredibly practical, and I've worked with Anthony for a few years on the back of it because I loved his concepts and way that he labeled things around sports psychology and in particular tennis psychology.
Mm-hmm.
So again, that's something that's had quite a deep impact on me as well. So I would say those two ones that jump to my mind. And for listeners, I don't get these questions in advance, so this is he's sprung these on me. So those are the two at the top of my list.
It's two good answers though. What is your favorite tournament?
Before I spouted out Wimbledon, which I was about to, I'm gonna I'm gonna pass on Wimbledon purely because it's Wimbledon's the greatest event in the world. It's not. It's almost too. It's not a tennis. It is a tennis tournament, but it's different. It's an event. It's a
Mm-hmm.
party. It's a garden party. It's tradition. It's history. It's like no other tennis tournament. You can't almost put it in the same category of
Mm-hmm.
as a tennis tournament. And anyone that hasn't been, go. You'll feel it when you walk through the doors. So then I would have to say Australian Open. Um, and in terms of just pure tennis tournament, Australia, I just think it's that whole period in Australia at that time of year. It's like sports heaven, and when the rest of the world is in there, the rest of the world tends to be in their winter.
Mm-hmm.
It's their summer comes alive, and they do it so fantastically well. And night matches, beautiful weather. The tournament's done very well. But from a fan perspective, I completely get it. You always really good crowds. So I'd have to say Australian Open.
Yeah, I love that one as well. Okay, last question for you. We've touched on this already. I typically ask, how do we make doubles more popular? But I'm going to rephrase it for you since we've talked about that a lot. Um, what are 1 to 3 things you would change in the next year to make doubles more popular?
Well, firstly would be social media. Um, I think I saw two doubles clips, and I'm not like constantly on social media, so I might have missed some, but on your tennis TV clips
Mm-hmm.
that you see, one of them was Rob Morgan. Rob is Wesley Kulof's coach, and
Mm-hmm.
love Rob, great guy. But Rob hitting like the camera had caught it. He'd ran back and he hit, like, it wasn't through his legs, but it was a ridiculous shot that he hit.
Yeah.
But that said a lot to me. He's not a doubles player. He's a coach. And that was
Yeah.
the one thing that they showed
Uh-huh.
of doubles from Indian Wells. And it was like, okay, great. Rob, hey mate, amazing shot. But we're not trying to necessarily market Rob. And the second one was actually Wesley Kulov hit a shot round the net post.
Yeah.
But
I saw that one.
apart from that, I see or I see very, very little,
Yeah.
you know. And so it sounds a bit like what you're saying, from the event that you mentioned earlier, where you said that, what event was it you talked about? And you said that they didn't have any of the doubles players up.
Oh, the WTA finals.
The
Yeah.
WTA finals, yeah.
Yeah.
So that these simple things that are just putting people and putting
Yeah.
the names in the limelight and familiarizing faces, you
Right.
know,
Stuff
and
they're already doing for singles on social
yeah,
media, and just do it
just
for doubles
yeah, build,
25% or something.
yeah,
Yeah.
just build some profile, you know,
Okay. Yeah.
build some profile. So I think that would be the first thing that I
Yeah.
would say. Um, The second thing I would say would be, yeah, get rid of change of ends. Get rid of change of ends and get rid of the warm up. You know,
So
just cut
would you do a break like after the first set or something? Maybe like 90 seconds after a set, or
possibly
just no change of ends.
possibly a minute. I
Yeah.
mean, geez, the guys could have a water bottle in the corner with their towel.
Would you still do change of ends but no break, or just
Yeah,
not even?
no, would have change of ends, sorry, but just
Yeah.
cut the breaks. Cut the
Yeah.
breaks.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
Okay.
know, no sitting down. I
Right.
just I just think if we're in the Netflix era of
Yeah.
instant gratification era. So
Yeah.
let's instantly gratify people with nonstop tennis.
Yeah.
You know,
Just
like,
grab a quick sip and keep going. Yeah.
yeah, you know, I mean, come on, guys. Like, I know, I mean, certainly my guys are in great shape. They're not going to struggle. They're not going to struggle to just play an hour of doubles without sitting down, you know.
Yeah.
So I would say that. Third one, I just want, like, maybe it's maybe this is actually a little bit hypocritical, but it's just the one that's jumped to my mind. I don't want to just go down the boring route, but, like, yeah, maybe there's like a timeout. So maybe they have one timeout a match where they can go and speaking their coaches, but the
Uh,
audience hear it. You know,
yeah.
everyone, they're mic'd up. You know, the player, they can call the timeout at any point. So
Yeah.
it might be
On
sudden
a
death,
no ad
point,
point or something.
no
Yeah.
ad point, miss first serve,
Yeah.
call the timeout. You know,
Yeah.
I see it. I watched a lot of basketball when I was in the States the last few weeks, and you know, like how they do it, where they ice the free throw shooter. You know, they
Right.
call the timeout just before they're taking a free throw. You know,
Oh, I
ice
like
them for their
that.
second serve. You know,
Yeah.
something that's strategic,
Yeah.
that brings, like, this, when they're going to do it. When
Yeah.
oh my god, they've done, oh my god, they've picked the
They
rock. You know,
they
like,
should use their timeout here.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Something
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
brings a different excitement to it. And do you know what?
I
You
like
lose
that.
matches, you double fuff, get over it, guys. You know,
Yeah.
and that goes into your training. You know, you start to do that in your training sets, and you start to,
Sure.
it just, you start to adapt the way that you go. So, is
Hmm.
that three? Is that three?
That's three. If you have
Yeah.
a fourth, we can keep
Well,
going. I know you're probably pressed for time though.
the fourth, it would just be carnival music place to be.
I like that.
You're not
Yeah.
just going for the tennis.
Yeah.
You're going because John Legend is singing as well, or I don't know. Do you know, you're going,
Yeah.
you're opening up other markets, you know,
Yeah.
and you're getting into different things. I'd love to keep. I think Grand Slams they're working. Grand Slams work. You know, I
Hmm.
don't think there's a lot needs to be touched in Grand Slams. I think probably the scoring system, and they've done it at Wimbledon this year. I would probably say Grand Slams go to the same scoring system for doubles as the rest of
Hmm.
the year. You can then get
Mm.
them onto bigger courts easier. Doubles match can be 3 hours right now in a Grand Slam. That's too much,
Yeah.
fitting into the world. We have to accept, as much as I'd like to be an old fuddy-duddy and say tennis is this way, we all wear white, we all do this, we all blah blah.
Yeah.
It's not the way of the world right now, and we've got to move. We've got to move with the times. So bringing a different atmosphere, making it more of an event, having music, having whatever else that comes, so you're attracting a different audience, and the tennis is a part of that, and after
Yeah.
a couple of beers, it goes to a tiebreak and someone calls a timeout and the crowd are into it. And, we then get that on social media and we start creating some stars. And that's how I think the sport can start to grow.
I love it. Awesome. Well, Dan, thank you so much for coming on. I'm sure we'll have to do a round two at some point because that was fantastic, and I know you have a lot more doubles knowledge to share with the audience. But anyways, for everyone listening, I'll link to everything in the show notes. Dan, any final requests of the audience or last comments before we hop off?
My last two things. Well, one, well done to yourself. I think you shining a light on the doubles tour, and I've started to follow your stuff as well. And it's great. It's great to see that,
Thank you.
someone is putting that passion into it. So, on behalf of the doubles guys out there as well, thank you for that as well, because that's great to have. Secondly,
Thank you.
any of the listeners that haven't listened, if you do love doubles, and you must have been told this before, Will, how much you look like John Piers.
I haven't heard that. No.
It's unbelievable. You need to put a picture of you and John Piers in the show notes as well, because at first when I picked up the phone, I thought John Piers was talking to me. So
Really?
that, yeah, just to keep the doubles theme going.
I guess I
Um,
kind of see it. Yeah. I've got some
uh,
photos of him. I was watching him at Indian Wells for a bit. So
It's unbelievable. I've been thinking it the whole. If I didn't say that at the end of this chat, then I would have regretted it. So, but no, good, just great. And again, everyone listening, thank you for. You're obviously all big supporters of doubles as well, So let's keep fighting the good fight. This is it gives us so much, and I
yeah.
genuinely, if I had anybody else in the world asked me to coach them, I wouldn't want to be coaching anyone but my doubles guys. And I mean that, like doubles, when I fully took it on, I had a few people say to me, are you sure? Like, you're
Yeah.
not going to get the respect that the singles coaches get. And yeah, I don't care about that. For me, I'm extremely passionate about doubles as a product, as a sport, to watch, to play, all of that. And I'm massively banging that drum to make sure that we better it for everyone involved. So thank you to everyone else that's doing that as well.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Dan, and we will chat again soon, I'm sure. If you want to become a smarter doubles player and start winning more matches, then join the Tennis Tribe Doubles Strategy newsletter. Every single Thursday, I'll send you a new doubles tip or tactic that you can use in your very next match. And when you join, you're going to get a free guide on how to play with more confidence and start dominating at the net in doubles. My name's Will. I'm the founder of the Tennis Tribe, and over the last 5 years, I've worked with players at every level of the game, from USTA 3.0 players all the way to Division I college programs, as well as some of the top 10 doubles players in the world. And on Thursdays, with this strategy newsletter, I share that knowledge and advice that I've gained over the years with you. So to sign up, you can go to thetennistribe.com. And again, you'll get that free net play guide when you join.